Thank you for joining us here at Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life. We are focusing right now on the topic of truth telling, honesty, and the lack thereof, and the complicated paths we often weave in our lives through the process of using our voice wisely or unwisely. And I would say that, this topic, we're in the season right now, we're in season 2 of Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life, which is living in the beautiful work. And I think that this is a critical topic for living in the beautiful work. How about you, Laurel? Welcome, Laurel. Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I love this topic. When it came up in our conversation, I thought, it's just such a fine line
Yeah.
between
Yeah.
how we live the beautiful life
Yeah.
in privacy or secrecy. Have you even talked about what our title is here?
Our
What
title
we're
today,
talking
Laurel
about?
just introduced it. Thank you, Laurel. So our topic today is secrecy versus privacy. What is the difference? And there is a big difference, isn't there, Laurel?
There is a big difference.
Sometimes subtle, but still powerful. So we want to nut that out a little bit today for our listeners and invite our friends into this conversation, into this thinking, into this investigation in their own lives, right?
Yes.
And to reconsider, right, where they are on both of these ideas, to just take a good look at it and think about how it might be impacting them and their ability to powerfully show up in life. Yeah.
I
Mm.
can't wait.
Yeah. So let's
Go.
talk a little bit about secrecy. So the first thing that comes up for me when I think about holding a secret is the secret has power over me. So
Yes.
for me, that's the essential problem ultimately with a secret. We don't want secrets. Let's put it that way.
Right. And this is such a big topic because right away what was coming up for me was, we have secrets that we choose to hold.
Mhm.
And then we have secrets maybe that we're not choosing to hold, but someone has asked us to hold.
Yes, holding other people's secrets.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And
Mhm.
how do we,
Yeah.
how do we protect someone else's privacy
Mhm.
without feeling a burden of holding the secrets?
Yes, yes. I know that we've mentioned this before on shows, but we've never really focused in on it. So hopefully we'll get a better sense of information out to people today on this topic. But I know for myself, having held, okay, so for one thing, both you and I are in the coaching profession. I was in a counseling profession where I was legally bound in many ways to hold people's secrets. Now I feel like I'm ethically and morally bound to keep things confident. And that's really, really important to me. So I'm comfortable in my role as counselor, coach, mentor holding people's private information in secret. I am very comfortable with that. Yes, if I know that they're giving me information that could harm other people, I know my duty is to disclose that to the authorities. So I'm duty bound to do that, and I will inform my clients that I am. But I feel like outside of that situation, right? I'm okay with being a confidant to others and not feeling burdened by it. Now, in my private life, it's a very different story. I don't I don't want to hold private secrets of other people close to me. I don't want to.
I don't either. It
Yeah,
it feels it feels heavy,
yeah, it feels very heavy.
yucky,
Having
right?
done it, it's been very and trickle. I've had to do it in a very tricky kind of way. And I wouldn't do it again, honestly. I think if somebody said, look, I have something I really want to share with you that it's a secret of mine. I've held it forever. I don't know if I would say yes. I would say, wait a minute. I need to think about it. I need to think about whether I can be your confidant in that because I don't know if I want to anymore,
Yeah, I agree
which
with
is
you. But,
interesting.
it
Yeah.
is interesting. And I think that as we, and I'm just going to remind our listeners that when you and I show up in this space, we know the topic we're talking about, but we are unscripted, we are raw and unedited, right? And
Yes,
so
absolutely.
I'm just going to throw that out there because I have no idea all of the things that are kind of churning in me, my ideas and my thoughts, like, what might come out in this way. But when we think about secrets and privacy, we all enter into agreements in friendships and relationships, almost unspoken rules, right?
Right.
Of being in relationship. And so you were just speaking about, willingly accepting holding someone's secret or allowing them to tell you. But so many times we're in relationship, and we do this ourselves. It's not just other people do this, but how often might I say, oh, I've got to tell you something, and I jump into it and I don't ask for permission.
Right.
I never ask the other person to hold that information.
Right.
So I think this is really interesting for me, that how do I live into privacy and secrecy in a way that doesn't burden other people?
Right. And that heightens your awareness of the difference even between privacy and secrets. Like people share private information. I mean, I have really intimate relationships with my friends. So I'm not disallowing people to share their private lives with me. I love to know about their private inner world, right? I mean, I love to share my private inner world. It's what excites me, about connecting and having close relationships with other people. But the secrets, right, that people carry with them, that they feel disempowered by, that they can't talk about openly with other people. I don't know if I would want to carry that anymore for somebody. I feel like I'm at a place in my life where I'm like, you know what, if you have that and it's really troubling you, or you feel the need to talk about it, it's probably, you really should be going to a counselor or your own coach, right? Your own person, where somebody can give you good counsel on that, right? And I don't want to be the counselor in my relationships in my friendships, right? And in my personal life, I work really hard to be not the counselor, not the coach, and I can't help being that in some respect because it's part of who I am. But I'm making an effort not to put myself in that role, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So I would say, and also because, and here's the thing, this is the reason why, this is the bottom reason why, this is my personal choice, is I don't want to feel the burden, just like we talked about, right? A secret is a burden. It's something heavy that we carry. And I'm at a point in my life where I don't want to be burdened with that, right? I don't want to have my mind start ruminating on whether I'm okay holding someone else's secret, and now whether I should be counseling them and I should be giving them, some sort of, I don't want that. Yeah. And I'm okay not wanting that. I'm okay not wanting that. I'm okay saying to somebody else, let me think about that. And if I decide, just say, look, why don't you go talk to a counselor? You really should get some good counsel on whatever's really weighing on your mind, Yeah.
So, and I think that, it's often, the difference between the privacy and the secrecy, as you're talking about, lies in that burden, which really at the innermost core of the burden for me is an emotion. And it's an emotion that, if I'm holding someone else's secret, I'm carrying the emotion. Now, not just my own emotion about what it is that they've asked me to hold in secret, but the emotion that they transferred from them to me. Often when we share a secret and we need to just get it off our chest and tell someone else about it, it's because it's too heavy for us to hold alone.
Right.
And we need someone to share and to lighten our own burden, right? By transferring it to someone else. And so what if we could really just release the emotion of it?
Yeah. Right. And that's the interesting part. And I think that I'm glad you were able to express that so well for, especially for our listeners as they're working through, what's working, what will and won't work for them. Because I think that's part of the reason that I came to that decision, right? That's probably one of the main factors that influenced me, is knowing I'm a very emotional person and that I will fret over somebody else's stuff and it will keep me awake at night. And I don't really want to do that.
Why would you?
Right,
Right?
right. And in my professional life, I can put that aside. I have the ability to separate myself and say, trust that I'm working with them. I'm giving them the good counsel. I'm helping as best as I can. And so I can let it go for now, right? Until we meet again. And,
Yeah.
and so I do think that that's a really important part of this, is each one of us, right, for ourselves, have to decide whether we can bear that emotional baggage. Now, if you're not really an emotional person and you're not, that's not your jam, maybe you can hold secrets for other people comfortably, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it won't bother
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now that we're talking about the emotion behind a secret, I think there's emotion also in privacy, in the things that we choose to hold private.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is a tiny, tiny thread, but often, I want to protect my privacy because I'm concerned about someone else's perspective and emotion about what I'm doing, right? And so it might be, fear of judgment. It might be shame. It might be, whatever I worry about that other people the emotion that they may feel, from something that I guess I want to not share it. I want to continue to be private,
Mm-hmm.
these certain details of my life,
Mm-hmm.
because I do worry about someone else's emotion about those details.
Right, right. So this is interesting. And I'm glad we've kind of crossed over from the secrecy more into privacy. And I'm glad we're now threading through this. What is privacy, right? So privacy is information that you keep to yourself, that you consider, not public information, or not needed to be shared that way, or not wanted to be shared that way. And oftentimes private information does cause us to feel vulnerable, right? And
Yes.
so that is the reason often that we keep it private. And I know, for me on this topic, I've really spent a lot of time with it and examined it. And I think that where I've landed with it is that in an ideal world, we could be completely transparent. We would not necessarily keep things private, because there wouldn't be this concern about people misusing our information, judging our information, throwing it back in our face at the wrong time, kind of thing. And so wouldn't that be nice if we were all that way? But we're not all that way. That is not the reality of the world that we live in. And also, I think, having examined it and sat with it for a really long time, I think there's some value in private information. There's some value in not being completely transparent all the time, right? There's some sense of it's okay to have thoughts that I don't share with everybody. Like, there's a part of our psyche and our person where, in a healthy individual, it's okay to have a thought that you don't share out loud. Like, it's not going to be harmful to you or anyone else. I think that's part of being like a whole total person, is that there's part of your mind or your brain that isn't put out there, and
Yes.
you don't want to, and there's nothing wrong with that, right?
And I think that's really important to really, to decide, an intentional, deliberate decision.
Yeah.
What is it you're keeping and why?
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe we get to decide, it's the why, it's the reason we're keeping it that maybe, differentiates between a secret and
Yes.
and privacy.
Absolutely. I do think that that's a really big, like the reason behind the decision not to share the information, right? And I know there are parts of my life that I think kind of I held in secret and have transferred over into, this is my private information, right? It's not a secret anymore. I could share anything about my life with people if I so chose, right? But
Yeah.
I don't find it necessary. I don't, it's like I'm not really sure how it would serve. And oftentimes I share things in client sessions because it serves.
Yes. I do the same. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really, it's a beautiful experience to be able to coach someone that's going through a certain situation that I have personal experience in, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, one of the things that just came up to me, and I had this conversation just recently
Mm.
about oversharing. And
Interesting.
when I, and I think it was coming up in our conversation about secrecy and privacy in that, what are the reasons that we might overshare, or what are the reasons other people overshare? And where this came up in the conversation was not feeling good about yourself after you overshare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
and yet in my experience, I mean, I can meet people and they know way too much about me right away. And I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was kind of unraveling this of how does it make other people feel and why am I doing it? Am I doing it because I believe that they'll be more comfortable if right away I'm an open book?
Yeah, interesting, right?
And
Yeah.
in how it might tie into my privacy is, again, I'm not making the decision for myself, but I'm anticipating what someone else expects or needs
Right.
and
Beautiful.
bringing that, right? And
Yeah.
so, and it pulls back into kind of keeping a secret, because when I think about the secrets I may keep, again, I'm worried about the other person
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
what they need and want or can handle.
Right.
Right. And so my behavior, whether I'm telling too much or I'm not telling enough, when it's about the other person and not about me, it does feel like, um, going back to the four agreements and being impeccable with my word, right?
Yeah.
And my own integrity. If I am choosing to share or not to share intentionally, deliberately, because of how I want to feel, that's very different
Yeah.
than keeping secrets, being too private, or being not private enough, worried about how the other person, what their needs are.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, so all of these, as I was listening, Laura, I love all that you shared here. And I think it really helps too for anybody listening that's like, am I oversharing, or why do I end up, being the one to kind of spill my guts to everybody in, a situation? And then why do I feel weird afterwards? Right. I think that lays the groundwork for great examination of that for anybody who's listening today. Right. Laurel's just given some great ideas about how to think about that and why, sharing your own reason, like why you're doing it. Right. It helps other people to be able to look at why am I doing it? Am I doing it for that reason? Maybe I'm not, but maybe it's this, right? So, so yeah, I think that the topic of oversharing is a really interesting one today, isn't it? It's a very interesting topic because we're making an effort to be more transparent in many ways, which I think there's some real good benefit to. Um, and we are working, I think, collectively as humans to figure out how to communicate in a better, more clear, more real way, which I think is a benefit, right? Um, and yet oversharing is probably really about the context of where you are and who you're with, isn't it? Ultimately,
I,
probably.
I think it is.
Yeah.
But when I think about the opposite end of that spectrum, and I think oftentimes about, being in work settings or business settings where you're meeting people you've never met before, right?
Yeah.
And so, sometimes you meet people that are oversharers.
Mhm.
And sometimes you meet people that are undersharers, right? Have you ever had an experience with someone and you think that they are uptight or not warm and welcoming, or right, standoffish.
I think people saw me that way for a lot of my life because I wasn't comfortable in social situations and I wasn't an oversharer. I was definitely an undersharer. And so
Yeah,
I know I was perceived as standoffish, intimidating, whatever the right words were, right? And I was just being present, not really comfortable sharing.
yes,
Ultimately what it
right.
was. Yeah.
And so, what I love about that, that kind of end of the spectrum versus the oversharing is that both of those situations are often misinterpreted by other people, right? Which is why pulling it back for me, when I am in a mood where I am feeling a little bit standoffish, it's the feeling of what is the emotion I'm carrying inside? What am I afraid of? Right?
Yeah.
No different than when I'm oversharing. What am I afraid of? What's the emotion? Like, what void am I trying to fill?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really such a deep exploration between what is it we keep private? What is it we need to keep secret?
Yeah.
And when we don't feel those needs, what is it we're trying to bring and why?
Right. Yeah. So those are all actually great. Let's nut those out a little bit as journaling exercises as we close out the program today. First of all, for yourself, right? Beginning to look at what do you keep private? What do you keep secret? And this might not be something that you want to keep in an open journal out and about, but certainly if you have the opportunity to write it down, I think it's really important to see it in words, right? You can always burn it later, but there's something about putting it out of your head and onto paper again that is a bit of a relief. So I think it's a worthwhile exercise.
And can I add to that?
Yeah.
And the why. What is it that you keep secret or private, and why? And then the next question I would ask is the decision to keep it fear-based or love-based?
Yeah, that's great. And I think sometimes when we are trying to figure out why we're keeping the secret, it isn't immediately obvious. So some of the questions you might ask is, instead, like, how come I'm keeping the secret? What's the purpose of keeping this a secret? What am I avoiding keeping this a secret? How do I benefit from keeping this a secret? Like, these are all questions. I know I reeled those out really fast, but go back and catch them because I think they're all good questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of for yourself, like, and applying those as well to anything that you keep private. And then for yourself, maybe, what is your rule of privacy? Like, what is like, I know I came to an agreement inside myself where I'm okay not being completely transparent with all the things I've done throughout my whole entire life. I'm okay not sharing some of those things. Are you, where are you with that? And I think that's very personal. I don't think there's a right or a wrong. I think as a counselor, as a professional in this field, right, I would say, I think if you're a healthy, well-balanced individual, you have a right to have things that you don't share. That's my opinion, my personal and professional opinion, not a fact, but my opinion. Yeah.
I would agree with you. And I think that being comfortable, being at ease with your reason, with your decision is what it all comes down to.
Yeah. And also, it's a lot of the work that we do when we're living and into the beautiful work is, I think it's peacemaking with the events of our life to date.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's why, being here at 65 years old, going, okay, I've done a lot of peacemaking with the things that I've done in my life, and even the ones that I don't feel great about. And so I can sit here now and say, yeah, it's worth it to do that work and to investigate for yourself, how you feel about all of that, why you're doing it. Is it okay for you? If it's not okay for you, what do you need to do to be okay with it, to come to peace with it? That's how you get to the beautiful inner life that we seek, I think, ultimately. Yeah.
Yes, I love that because
Lord,
really,
what a topic.
I know. And when you think about it, is our life,
Mm,
perhaps our one and only life.
yeah.
And, how do you want to feel about your choices, your decisions, whether they're past or present or in your future, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I will say to anybody listening, it may be that there's private information that I haven't shared that I've decided I don't want to share, and I might change my mind before I die. And I have a right to do that. I have a right to come to a place where I go, it might be worthwhile for me to share that out there in some way with some people or the public or who knows what, and I think again, that's that our right, as we just, in our season did a thing about evolving over your life, right? Evolving throughout your life. And so this is one of the beautiful aspects. It's like make peace with where you are now, right? And you might find yourself at a juncture or a crisis or an experience that changes your thoughts about all of these things, right? Or some of them, or little pieces of them. And you get to change your mind about that. Yeah.
And how beautiful is that?
Yeah. So ultimately, what I want to close out with here, Laurel, and just reiterate is, this is a worthy topic to explore because it's very much connected with your own personal power and authority. And if you feel like secrets and privacy have power over you, you're not allowed to do things, it's not by choice, this puts you in a very compromised position. So this is like, I know the things I choose to share, I choose not to share. I'm taking full responsibility for that, right? And I'm okay with that. I don't feel burdened by that in any way. And if you feel burdened out there, this is some beautiful work to do and to get to. Yeah.
Yes, I think it's a great reminder because, living into our power, stepping into it and then living into it is really a beautiful place to be.
Absolutely. Live your
Yeah.
power, friends
Mm.
out there. Mm.
Well,
Okay.
thank you for another great conversation.
So good. All right. We'll be back for more on this topic. We are going to actually move right into this is our next episode. I just want to give a little teaser for our friends. Our next episode is on recognizing narcissism, and there's a lot of overlap. Not overlap with our conversation today, but our conversation today is going to be a great lead into that because we're talking about truth telling a lot in that one and the complications of being in relationship with somebody who doesn't tell the truth. Yeah.
Yes.
So, okay.
Great. Look
Onward.
forward to it. Bye.
Thank
Have a
you,
good
Laurel. Bye
day.
for now.